I think vendor consolidation is a good strategy to implement, primarily because if you look at the landscape today, we've built a lot of complexity, and a lot of this has got built over time, right? Cybersecurity inherently started off on a best of breed approach, right, and led to a lot of point technologies getting deployed, which kind of made sense, as architectures evolved and as landscapes evolved. But today, as enterprises start moving towards a cloud-first approach, right, and a lot of applications now being cloud native or built for cloud, built for purpose to run in cloud environments, there's this interesting paradigm shift that's coming about, and there's an interesting analysis and a data point that's been put out by Gartner, where they say that by 2025, 70% of enterprises will consolidate vendors who are securing their cloud native applications down to 3 partners or 3 vendors. I think that's a fairly interesting data point, and it's quite telling of where the industry is going, right? As I said, we built complexity, we built a lot of products. Enterprises continue to buy security technology, and a lot of that ends up either being shelfware, or there are incomplete deployments where outside of the initial pilot implementation or a basic set of use cases that were proved out, the full product doesn't get rolled out, right? And the next time when an enterprise is faced with a security problem, there's potentially maybe a different buyer in the IT landscape who goes and buys a different security product, right? So there's a lot of different products that have got purchased. Those products obviously get deployed by different vendors. So there are new vendors getting introduced into the enterprise for the entire design, deploy, build, operate life cycles, and that's kind of leading to both a product sprawl as well as a vendor sprawl, right? And then if you look at the other aspect there, that's kind of leading to is the fact that it does put a lot of risks on enterprises. I'll talk about risks as we go along, but the other big element there is talent shortage. I think the cybersecurity industry, we know that talent is at a premium, cyber skills are at a premium. So with a lot of this, with multiple vendors being there in the environment, there are risks around lack of skill, lack of the right kind of talent, plus potentially loss of knowledge, right? So when the talent moves, there is implicit knowledge that kind of moves along with the talent, and that kind of puts some risks on an enterprise. If you look at a multi-vendor environment, I will start off from what I was talking about before, right? I think the first element that really comes in is on the talent side, right? A multi-vendor environment, especially as we're facing with talent shortage, typically lends into a situation where you've got either a lot of contingent workforce that's being brought in to do point-in-time projects, or multiple vendors really sourcing talent from different places. So you have risks around loss of knowledge, loss of or lack of service continuity, because if you lose a resource who was managing critical infrastructure for you or managing some critical cyber controls, and that talent leaves, right, you could have potential situations where you've got environments that are not supported anymore. The other aspect that could also come in is with a lot of churn in talent, there's always the risk of some sort of malicious behavior creeping in. I think insider threat has always been cited as a very large risk to enterprises, and if there isn't the right set of control that's being put in on the talent that's coming in, insider risk becomes pretty large. From a service quality standpoint, quality assurance becomes a big challenge. And the last thing I would say that we are now starting to see quite a bit is the watermelon effect that we speak about in IT quite a bit, but we're starting to see that in cyber as well, right? Multiple different vendors in the environment with overlapping responsibilities will kind of be in a situation where each vendor says, hey, my SLA is met, or I am meeting my deliverables. But from an enterprise standpoint, there are definitely gaps in the enterprise security posture, leading to gaps in enterprise resiliency, leading to potential security incidents. So all of that is kind of bubbling up to be a significant business risk to the enterprise. I think when we look at vendor consolidation, one of the first things that comes to mind is this cannot be a short-term strategy, right? So going into a vendor consolidation exercise, it's very important to look at this from a long-term business case standpoint. It's got to span across not just cost, but also service continuity, service improvement, and risk mitigation, right? So all these elements need to be kind of looked at together, and you've got to look at it from a long-term business case standpoint. I think that's one of the first very critical aspect. The second aspect is definitely on talent, right? Going down the path of doing vendor consolidation, there is the potential of some really good talent being lost, right? It's important that that talent gets handled in the right manner. You've got to identify key talent, talent that's important because of the skills that they bring in, or talent that's important because of the tribal knowledge that they have on the environment, right? So identification of talent becomes important. Handling of that talent through the consolidation exercise, I think, is an important aspect that needs to be planned. And then finally, when you're looking at the third aspect on talent, is when you're looking through how do you migrate and how do you consolidate, is really working out the finer details of how do you do the knowledge transfer. So, looking at documentation, how do you really transfer that retained tribal knowledge over, the contextual understanding of the environment. A lot of that does not get captured in platforms and systems and documentation, right? So planning through that, I think the entire transition planning becomes an important aspect on the talent side. And then finally, I think the third important tip that I would that I talk to customers about is really look for a partner who will invest in the long-term success of the relationship. I think that's an important aspect, right? And when you're looking at long-term success, there are about 3 or 4 different elements that you've got to look at. You've got to look at how is that partner really looking at talent from a talent creation, from a talent skilling standpoint. What are the levers that are being applied from a human effort reduction perspective, right? So looking at automation, looking at bringing in new technology to help in cutting down the amount of human effort that goes in, reducing cycle time, doing shift lefts, aspects like that, right? So investing in a way, investing in proactively cannibalizing services revenue, but still improving outcomes that are being delivered. Some of that is also, it's also important to do process improvement. It's not just doing automation, but sometimes it's about looking at the process that's being followed and doing process improvement. And I think the final aspect, very important there, through the entire vendor consolidation exercise, is handling the organization change management. It's an aspect that's very often overlooked, but a very important aspect. There are multiple dimensions of organization change management that need to be handled through the entire consolidation exercise, starting right at the inception planning stage, right? So it's very important to bring the OCM aspect in, from day -1, I would say, right? Not just day 0. I think challenges, obviously there are operational challenges which we spoke about earlier, and that's what lends towards vendor consolidation. But the real challenges on the ground very often come from behavioral aspects, I think that's a very big element that we see in most enterprises. The behavioral aspects, because of the perceived loss of control, or you know, I think some of it is also about dynamics of ensuring that you have segregation of duties. How can you really have everything with one vendor? The risks associated with one vendor doing all of the services, right? And that goes back to the previous point that I was saying, that it's not about looking for a vendor, but looking for a partner who's really committed to long-term success, right? But that vendor risk becomes an important aspect. Then there are operational aspects around loss of knowledge, transition risk, but those are kind of the key ones that bubble up very often. Okay, in terms of who should really lead that conversation about driving vendor consolidation, I would say it has to be a collaborative effort between the cybersecurity service line leaders in the enterprise, the cyber and the IT execs, vendor management. I mean, most organizations have fairly strong vendor management practices, and bring vendor management in along with the sourcing and the procurement function, right? So everyone's got a part to play in it. It's important that it's got to be a balanced, collaborative exercise between them. There's also merit at times to bring in an external sourcing agency, right? And these external sourcing, actually an external sourcing advisor, more than an agency, an external sourcing advisor who can really provide that framework for how do you go about doing this vendor consolidation exercise. They can help with the right metrics of how do you make decisions, how do you evaluate the partners that should be that partner from a long-term standpoint. They can provide guidance of what they are seeing across other enterprises that they've done similar engagements with, and there's significant benefit that can come in from bringing in a sourcing advisor as well. I'm going to go back to saying something that I've said a couple of times before already, right? I think one of the key elements there is moving from a vendor relationship to a partner relationship, right? The paradigm shift's really going to come in when you look at that as a true partnership, right? If it's a partnership-based relationship, that's where you have a partner who's really then aligned to the business outcomes that the enterprise wants to drive. And then look at what are the security outcomes that you want to drive, right? From a posture maturity standpoint or from a resiliency standpoint. So that, I think that's kind of the most important overarching aspect. Below that, you will have aspects of, can the partner then really invest in building the right skill pool? Okay, because no IT environment is static. I mean, as business grows, the IT environment will change. So how does the partner really invest in building the skill pool to support your medium to long-term initiatives? Does the partner have the ability to do point-in-time support for capacity ramp-up that might be required? How can the partner actually provide support in case of an incident? I mean, the possibility of an incident always exists, and if that happens, the partner that you consolidate with, can they bring in additional skills and capabilities to help you through that incident recovery, the restoration process, along with the investigation process? These two aspects have to run hand in hand. You've got to figure out what went wrong. There will be legal aspects around it. There could be regulatory aspects around it. That's a parallel thread to run. But you've got to get the enterprise back up and running. You've got to get, you've got to go back to business as usual. And working through the recovery restoration part of it becomes important. So getting a partner who can work with you end to end across these various different elements kind of becomes very important. And that's where selecting the right partner. And I started off by saying that it's got to be a partner. It cannot be a vendor. So having the right partner who can partner with you through those initiatives end to end, I think is kind of up front and center in that entire drive to consolidate. HCL Tech's, our stated aim is to be a preferred partner to the customers that we work with, to the enterprises that we work with, and the aim is really to drive joint success in a way that we can help our customers be successful in the business that they drive, right? From HCL standpoint on the cyber side, I think we are very heavily invested in creating that global talent pool that's required today. One of the things that we see is that there's talent shortage, and you get different type of talents available in different parts of the world, right? So those investments in different parts of the world, in terms of building, our cybersecurity fusion centers, in terms of our technology partnerships, in terms of partnerships that we're doing with academia, through various different programs that we have in terms of working with universities, colleges for early skill build programs, our fresher intake programs. All of that's kind of driving a lot of grassroots skill creation, right? The other initiatives that we drive in terms of cross-skilling of resources, right? So taking in talent with IT skills and training them on cyber also helps in driving talent creation, skill pool creation. And then the final other aspect, that's something that we take great pride in, is our strong people practices. We've known to be a very strong people company. We've always spoken about being employee first, being our concept and our ideology of ideapreneurship, allowing people to kind of grow, is kind of very important, right? And our people practices include extremely strong practices around rebadging, rehiring. And when we get into a vendor consolidation exercise, I think that becomes an important aspect. I spoke about identifying talent early and handling that talent in the right manner. And that's where these strong HCL people practices of being able to retain that talent, bring that talent in, and give them the right career path for them to grow within the HCL family, I think becomes a very important aspect. And that's a key aspect that HCL can kind of offer to our customers.